You want me to translate alien love poetry? I choked on my coffee, staring at my supervisor in disbelief. Isn't it a little early in the day for jokes, Dr. Ellis? Ellis cleared his throat, the lines around his eyes deepening as he resisted a smile. I was hoping you'd feel that way, Dr. Langston. Humor me, would you? It's top secret, high priority. And let's just say your standard technical translations won't quite cut it. He ushered me down a sterile white corridor of the Xenolinguistics Center, and something about his secrecy sparked my curiosity. I'd always been fascinated by the way language mirrored culture, and this promised to be more bizarre than a three-legged racehorse. My footsteps tapped a lonely rhythm until we reached a door significantly heavier than the rest. They're in here, Ellis murmured, swiping a keycard. With a groan of hydraulics, the massive door swung open to reveal a terrarium? Lush greenery shimmered under artificial sunlight. In the center, two 7-foot-tall creatures vaguely resembling praying mantises swayed together. Their segmented exoskeletons glinted iridescent blue, razor-sharp forelimbs intertwined with an almost unsettling tenderness. Oh, wow, I breathed, transfixed. I'd always considered extraterrestrial life vaguely humanoid or outright monstrous. These were strangely beautiful. Meet the Ziltri, Ellis said, pride warming his voice. First contact was rough, as it typically is, but we've achieved a basic understanding. Except, he gestured to the swaying creatures. Lovers, apparently. We have no idea what they're saying to each other. I followed his gaze. Small vibrations rippled the air around the Ziltri, a buzzing thrum that prickled along my skin. Was that their version of speech? This is where you come in. Ellis handed me a thick folder. Observation logs, every scrap of audio captured. We need you to crack their language, Dr. Langston, but I'll warn you. Everything we've tried to translate so far? He hesitated. Well, it reads like remarkably graphic erotica, at best. Graphic erotica? I raised an eyebrow, skepticism battling amusement. I've dealt with my fair share of passionate French sonnets. Then you understand the urgency, Ellis said. If we want to cement diplomatic relations and not inadvertently start a war, we need the true context of their communication. The task loomed larger now, with geopolitical implications hanging on my work. All right, let's see what your bug-eyed Romeos are whispering. The observation notes were, in a word, bewildering. The Ziltri spent hours intertwined, accompanied by intricate displays of pincer clicks, thorax rubs, and the occasional high-pitched chirp. Translating that into a vocabulary was like building a castle from sand. I spent days pouring the audio files, matching sonic patterns to the creature's behavior. Slowly, I began to distinguish what seemed like nouns, a series of shrill chirps that consistently accompanied the caressing motions of their forelimbs. Or a deep thrum in their thoraxes appeared every time they rubbed antennae. The breakthrough came when I least expected it. I'd fallen asleep at my desk, cheek pressed against a stack of data pads when a faint sound woke me. The Xiltri were murmuring in their sleep. I jolted awake, heart pounding. On my monitor, the frequency tracker was going wild. Still, the sonic pattern was more straightforward, devoid of their complex clicking speech. This was raw, stripped down, and I caught words I'd tentatively identified. Antenna, thorax, chitin, and a new liquid warble that hadn't shown up before. A burst of inspiration struck. I scribbled a word I wouldn't have dared use in professional work under normal circumstances. Beloved. Piecing the fragments together, I realized the Xiltri's complex displays weren't about aggressive seduction, as we'd naively suspected. They were declarations of affection, promises of safety, a language built not for conquest, but for cherishing. Dr. Ellis, I practically sprinted to his office, waving the fresh translation. It's not erotica. Think knightly vows, chivalrous gestures, that kind of intensity. Dr. Ellis looked equally bewildered and amused as he took the translation. His eyes danced across the notations. Mutual grooming as an act of devotion? Ritualized sharing of bodily fluids? He looked up, a slow grin forming. Well, that's certainly a way to show you care. Armed with my new findings, the diplomatic breakthrough was startlingly swift. When a human envoy presented a Ziltri dignitary with a bouquet of Earth's finest roses, the gesture went disastrously wrong. The dignitary reared back, mandibles clicking in what we assumed was outrage. That's when I was rushed back in. No, I blurted, remembering the translations. Flowers aren't romantic to them. It'd be like offering a human a handful of dead skin cells. I suggested offering a high-quality tool instead. An elegant titanium multi-tool was hastily procured, and the effect was magical. The Ziltri crooned with pleasure, running their forelimbs along its shiny edges. Finally, we spoke the same language: care, practicality, and a shared desire for well-built things. The rest was a whirlwind. Trade agreements bloomed alongside an exchange of cultural knowledge. I began composing what was possibly the first and only Ziltri human dictionary, filled with phrases like, "To brush one's exoskeleton is a display of the deepest trust. The gift of regurgitated prey is the highest form of affection. Beware interpretive dances involving exposed egg sacs." My once mundane job wasn't mundane anymore. The phrase, "You want me to translate alien love poetry?" was no longer a joke. It was my reality. And as ridiculous as it sounded, through buzzing vibrations and mandibles tenderly stroking titanium, I'd stumbled across something extraordinary. Even the most alien hearts yearn for connection. Love, it seemed, was the actual universal language after all. Word of my intergalactic matchmaking skills rippled through the Xenolinguistics Center. Soon, I was a sought-after commodity, the one called in for the weirder linguistic anomalies. The jellyfish-esque blorg expressed emotions by changing their bioluminescence patterns. Translating angry, "you make me glow puce" took a few tries. And the rock-like thrumk, whose bonding method was to slam their bodies with a bone-jarring thud. Each new species was a puzzle, a window into the vast array of how sentience could manifest and express itself across the universe. But through it all, the Xiltri remained my favorite. There was a poignant beauty in their ritualized devotion. This gentle strength always reminded me of that first day I saw them swaying under the artificial sunlight. One day, Dr. Ellis summoned me again, but this time, his smile had a twist. "We have a special request," he said, leading me not to the terrarium, but to a small polished conference room. A hush fell as I entered. A lone Ziltri dignitary sat at the vast table, its shimmering form radiating a quiet dignity. As my eyes adjusted, I realized something different. It held a small, intricately woven basket. "Dr. Langston," the dignitary emitted a series of soft chirps, a translator unit whirring. "We thank you. You hear the song of our hearts." With a deliberate movement, it extended the basket. Inside, nestled against soft leaves, was a single, perfect titanium screw. It took all my willpower not to burst into happy, disbelieving laughter. Of all the things the Ziltri, these poets of the practical, had chosen the ultimate symbol of their affection. "You're welcome," I managed, my voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for teaching me that even the strangest love song can be beautiful." The gift of the screw became something of a legend in the Xenolinguistics Center. It was a reminder that sometimes the most profound translations aren't about grand speeches or diplomatic treaties, but about the quiet, peculiar ways that beings connect across the vast emptiness of space. Years later, my office was cluttered with strange and beautiful mementos of my career. A shimmering Blorg mood chart with mild irritation and pleasantly surprised, marked in vibrant corals, a Thrumk handshake glove fashioned out of a heat-resistant alloy, and of course that prized titanium screw displayed in a velvet-lined case. One afternoon, a fresh-faced intern stood at my doorway, eyes alight with the same excitement I'd once carried. "Dr. Langston," she said breathlessly, You'll never guess what they've sent for analysis this time. It's a sonic sculpture, and it's supposed to be an epic poem, but the frequency patterns are completely new. I leaned back in my chair, a grin spreading across my face. Well then, I declared, let's get to work. You never quite know what kind of love story the stars will send you next. Did you enjoy this dive into alien love poetry? Because there are plenty more adventures to be had. Click the next video for another epic sci-fi story.